Welcome to Conversations with Slava. Today I'm talking to Sam Husseini, founder of votepact.org. Sam, please explain what is Vote Pact? How has it come about?
A lot of people don't really want to vote for either of the candidates. They don't want to vote. They certainly don't want. Let's just take the obvious case. Somebody who's left of center, they disagree with Joe Biden on a whole host of things, but they feel like they have to vote for him because they have to stop Trump. The idea is to say, and you know, in our voting system in the United States, we don't have ranked choice voting or score voting. You can't rank people 1, 2, 3. You just have to vote for one person, and that's typically your lesser evil. With Vote Pact, what you do is you find somebody on the other side, somebody who doesn't want to vote for Trump but feels like they have to. Maybe they don't believe in abortion or something like this. So you both pair up and you both vote for the third party of your choice. So you're not changing the balance between Biden and Trump, but you are both coming together because you know and trust each other. Or in this election, so many people are doing mail-in ballots. You can mail in your ballots together. You come together instead of both of you being imprisoned, one voting for Biden because they hate Trump and the other voting for Trump because they hate Biden. Come together and both vote for the third parties of your choice. You could vote Green or Socialist and they could vote Libertarian or Constitution Party, for example. Or maybe there's an enterprising independent candidate that you could both get behind in some fashion, say some combination of Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich, some anti-establishment candidate that can draw from both sides. But that's the basic idea, to say you don't have to vote for the lesser evil. This is a way out. It requires real work because you have to have a meaningful dialogue and make an agreement with a would-be Trump supporter. That could be a family member who you've been arguing with. It could be somebody on Facebook who you can't believe that that they're pro-Trump or that they might vote for Trump. And it allows people to get beyond the lesser evilism, the bickering, the reflexive, oh, Trump is bad, so therefore, therefore that means that I have to vote for Biden.
But we will face an avalanche of accusations that they are wasting their votes, that this is the most important election of our lifetime, and they've been irresponsible from all over the media and from people in their surroundings.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I've explained it sufficiently. I understand that accusation if it is one person saying, instead of voting for Biden, I'm going to vote for the Green Party. Okay, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand the accusation in that case. But that's not what's happening here. It's not the case that this hypothetical person is just voting third party. They are taking somebody on the other side with them. It's called Vote Pact, P-A-C-T. So you're making a pact with somebody else, and you're both taking one vote away from Biden and one vote away from Trump. So you're not helping Trump, and they are both going to third parties. Okay, so you're building up third parties, giving independent, anti-establishment political movements some leverage, and you are diminishing the duopoly. You're able to not vote for Biden without helping Trump. How is this accomplished? Because you have a relationship with this would-be Trump supporter. It could be a debating partner, it could be somebody at work, it could be somebody you went to school with, whatever it is. And it requires social cohesion. It requires you to actually interact in a mature fashion with somebody that you disagree with, which I think is also a very beneficial thing for people to do.
I have spoken to Ryan Grimm of Interset,
Mm-hmm.
and he argued that the media played in significant role in the outcome of the Senator Sanders campaign. What would the media do in such a case? Wouldn't the media give platforms to the big Democratic Party and Republican Party candidates while leaving the other candidates in the dark and preventing them from emerging and challenging at some point the other ones?
Absolutely. I think that the entire way that the primary system was constructed and that the way that the media and the DNC did things helped ensure Sanders' defeat. That was made plainly evident in the way that it ended with Kamala Harris and bowing out before Super Tuesday and then after Joe Biden's Super Tuesday win. You had Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar back Biden, and I think that was sort of the tip of the iceberg. So they very much, the DNC in coordination with CNN and a lot of the other establishment media, I think effectively rigged the primaries to ensure Sanders and probably Warren's defeats. And frankly, sometimes I think that Sanders, I hesitate to say that he didn't want to win, but sometimes he acted like he didn't want to win, that he was part of the problem in certain cases. For example, he never really challenged Biden on his Iraq war lies. He just reiterated over and over again, he voted for the war, I voted against it. But Biden is continuing to lie about the Iraq war and his stances on that, and he never meaningfully got called on it by any of the candidates, and certainly not by the electronic media, especially during the debates. In any case, what I'm saying is that, yes, the system is very much rigged. Yes, the corporate media do rig things, but we have some tools. One tool is freedom of speech. We should use it to say honestly what Joe Biden is and what Trump is. Second tool that we have that we should not disenfranchise ourselves of is the vote. That we have fundamentally universal suffrage in the United States, with some exceptions, prisoner and ex-prisoners and so on. And that is a very important thing, and we should utilize it to the maximum of our ability. I think a lot of so-called progressives right now are, in effect, disenfranchising people. They are saying, don't you dare vote for the person on the ballot who you agree with the most. I think that there's a really big problem with that. Now, I also don't necessarily fully agree with a lot of people who say, do vote for the person who you agree with the most, regardless of the consequences, right? Because if you do that, then, if your first choice is Green and your second choice is Biden and anybody, and Trump is your last choice, in some cases, if you vote for Green, you might actually help Trump because of the limitations of our voting system. Vote Pact solves that problem. It says you can vote for your first choice because you got this leverage. You're bringing somebody from the other side so that they vote for their first choice. Let a libertarian vote for the Libertarian Party and not for Trump because they don't want Biden. You both get your freedom. You both get to vote for your true preferences.
But another problem is that the Democratic and Republican Party have developed their party machines over decades. And the moment Vote Pact has massive appeal and threatens their candidates, those machines, not just the media, will come down on this system and on the candidate with full force.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They absolutely will. And, you know, life is a struggle. And if you have a measure of success, the establishment will lash out at you. That's a sign of progress. That's a good thing. They will, if Vote Pact takes off, they will attack it, they will mock it, they will attempt to marginalize it, they'll attempt to sow distrust between people. How foolish it is of you to trust your wife, your neighbor, your debating partner. Sure, they'll do all kinds of things. I think this is a question of, are we going to listen to what big media say, or are you going to have a human dialogue and a human contact and attempt to assert your own beliefs? I think that that's a worthy fight to have, and it's a fight for the meaning of what it means to be able to vote.
How do you want to lead this fight? The media is not on your side, but what ways of communications would you like to use? You point to a Facebook page, you point to interpersonal contact, but to make it a mass movement, what would you do? What do you do?
The most important thing that would help this become a mass movement is some real life pairings. So to put a better face on it. I mean, right now I'm talking with two people about forming a Vote Pact. One is Dan McAdams. I don't know if you know him or if you've ever interviewed him. He works with Ron Paul. He works at the Ron Paul Institute. He is, decidedly right of center, but he's a pro-peace, anti-interventionist person. He seems inclined not to vote. But if he changes his mind and he decides to vote, then I will make a Vote Pact with him. And instead of my voting for Biden and him voting for Trump, we would both vote for third parties of our choice. And I have a relative that I'm talking with who voted for Trump in 2016 and looks like they're going to vote for Trump again. And I think it would be better if they didn't vote for Trump. And I certainly don't want to vote for Biden. And so if we make a Vote Pact together, then they don't vote for Trump, I don't vote for Biden, and we both vote for third parties that we more believe in. What we really want is pairings, true life pairings, people writing this story, people making videos of the two of them making a Vote Pact together. And from those first little crystallizations of people making this social pact with each other, I think it can branch out.
Do you see a way to make sure that the third party candidates for whom you and the person you pair with would vote for, that they are visible? Do you see a way to make sure they have place on the debate stage and they appear in the media in a
Right.
reasonable manner.
Well, I mean, most Vote Pact solves, in many respects, the major problem that third parties have, right? I mean, like take the obvious case, Howie Hawkins of the Green Party. He's basically running on a lot of what Sanders ran on, you know, Green New Deal, Medicare for all, um, skeptical, you know, wanting to turn back much of U.S. militarism, and so on. But he's polling much lower than Bernie Sanders did. Partially that's name recognition, but partially that is the knee-jerk reaction in people's minds that they don't want to vote third party because voting third party means helping the one that you hate the most. It means helping Trump. So I'm not even going to look at him. I'm not even going to think about him. I think a skillful strategy by third parties would be to appropriate Vote Pact. You know the most successful third party candidate since Perot, everybody talks about Jill Stein in the Green Party in 2016, was Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson got far more votes than Jill Stein. He even got more votes than Ralph Nader did when he ran. And he actually, or a PAC backing him, employed the Vote Pact strategy. They branded it as the Balanced Rebellion. They, in effect, took my idea, didn't credit me, that's okay, and called it the Balanced Rebellion. But he never talked about it in his campaign. This PAC put out a very entertaining video with dead Abe Lincoln, and got, you know, tons and tons of views on online. So I think, and this dovetails with some of the problems. You mentioned the debates. There's a huge problem with the debates because the debates say, if you look at the specific criteria of the Commission on Presidential Debates, which was founded by the Democratic and Republican parties, to help ensure that only if both of them agreed would a third party candidate be allowed on the stage. They claim that their criteria is that only if somebody is allowed onto the debate stage, only if 15% of the American public wants them to be president. The problem is that the polls that they depend on don't ask who you want to be president. They all ask pretty much, if the election were held today, which of the following would you vote for? That's not the same thing. A lot of people can want Green Party or Libertarian and not plan on voting for them because they plan on voting for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. So the way that the poll is formulated simply aggravates the limitations of our voting system. So we enter in these election cycles, and there, in effect, is never an honest poll done. You could have, theoretically, a plurality of the American public that wants a third party candidate, and we'd never know it because the public is never asked. Now, they are occasionally asked, are you satisfied with these people? Would you like somebody else? And those figures are incredibly high. A lot of the American public wants somebody else besides Trump or Biden. Most of the American public hasn't heard of the Green or the Libertarian or any other third party candidates because of the limitations of the media. But if people who do know about them start organizing themselves in this fashion that's resilient, right? I mean, a lot of so-called progressives right now are spending a lot of time saying everybody's got to vote for Biden because we don't want Trump. I think that's kind of destructive because you in effect have no leverage over Biden when you do that. You're saying you could become as pro-war, as pro-Wall Street as you want to be, and we're still going to browbeat progressives into voting to make sure that you get elected. There's no leverage in that. And I think that that's a self-defeating strategy at best.
On the Vote Pact side, there is a graph saying before Vote Pact and then after Vote Pact 1, 2, 3, 4. So you are embracing a long-term strategy. You want to adopt this approach over time and ensure that it grows, that it gathers more support in the future elections. How do you ensure such loyalty to this approach, such resilience?
Well, it is possible that it can grow over time, but that really wasn't meant as a time thing. It was meant as a instance thing. I mean, if tomorrow, after or whenever this interview airs, if as a result of hearing it, a bunch of people start forming vote pacts, right? A possible Biden supporter who's listening to us after they listen to this interview, goes and finds a would-be Trump supporter in their life who they know and trust, or can ensure that they mail in ballots together, and they form a vote pact, then that's one vote away from Biden and Trump. And then they tell people, and they tell me, and I promote it, then that galvanizes further support. If it's a real thing to people and not simply an amorphous idea, then I think that it can take off. There may be some limitations because of, obviously, the limitations of the third parties right now in terms of their resources, in terms of the media. You point to those limitations, they're certainly there. But I think a huge part of the limitation is just simply the taboo of even considering voting for a third party. And I think that once these pairings happen, then the idea is if you have 10 for Biden and 10 for Trump, you take 2 here, you put them here, and then you have 9 for each. Well, you take another 2 and you put them here, and then you put them here, and then you corrode the dominance, the sense of inevitability of the establishment two-party system, where the Democratic establishment continuously manipulates principled progressives, and the Republican establishment continuously manipulates populists, right-wing populists, libertarians, people over the abortion issue. A whole host of people are effectively imprisoned by the two-party system. To break out of that mindset.
On the site, it's on several occasions says we. You have developed this idea. Who are your colleagues, supporters?
I have a couple of people on Facebook who spread the word around it. I simply know her as JN. She manages the Facebook page. And a couple of other people have liked it, have, made vote pacts in past years. Andrew Stewart over at Washington Babylon made a vote pact with his dad, I think, in 2016. There are a whole host of Um, you're saying people will attack Vote Pact. That hasn't happened yet. I think most of the establishment hasn't attacked it because they don't want to deal with it, because it's a very dangerous notion. Most of what's happened is that people have intentionally misunderstood it. For example, there's this notion of vote swapping. Are you familiar with that?
You mention it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a totally different thing. The idea of vote swapping is to quote unquote minimize the damage of the third parties so that, so that a would be third party voter in a swing state, say Ohio or Florida, swaps their vote with somebody in a safe state. That doesn't get the third party any additional votes. It just moves them from swing states, quote unquote, swing states to quote unquote safe states. This to me is a kind of insidious strategy. First of all, it makes it so that people vote for people who they don't want, right? It's in effect saying that the person who wants to vote for a third party in a swing state doesn't do that. They vote for, Biden. And the, Democrat in New York or whatever the safe state is. And it doesn't help grow third parties. It minimizes the damage. So one of the biggest hurdles in terms of Vote Pact is that every 4 years out of the woodwork, the media trumpet this vote swapping strategy. And people often confuse Vote Pact with vote swapping when the two things are radically different in their principles and in their implications if they were actually abided by. Vote Pact actually opens the door to a literal electoral victory, if not this election cycle, a future election cycle. Because if Vote Pact takes off to a certain degree, and then the third party candidates don't pull it off because they're not articulate enough, or they don't, they don't have adequate resources, or whatever it is, it's not going to cure cancer. Okay, it can't do everything, but it will point the way to the next election. That if those things are overcome, if third parties put forward stronger candidates, then they might actually have a chance at winning. Right now, a lot of people don't bother running because they perceive that there's no chance because of this problem of the lesser evilism. No one will even consider voting for a good third party candidate because they have to vote against Trump or against Biden. Vote Pact overcomes that problem.
Thank you very much for this interview, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you, Slava.
I wish you all best for your work and for the exhibition.
Thank you.